I have to cheat a little bit with embroidery again today. If you know me, you know why. I would like to show you how I made this vignette display panel with a stamped and painted embroidery hoop. Get ready for a mixed media experiment with some unexpected surprises. Hi and welcome. This is Luise Heinzel. Nice to see you here today on my channel Junk Journal Art. Normally, I make junk journals. Sometimes I make some cards, but sometimes I also make something like this. So let's do this together. We are going to start with a vignette display panel. And before you ask, I know that there are always a lot of questions. This is the biggest panel which is available from Tim Holtz Ideology, so the biggest one that is existing. This embroidery hoop I found on Amazon. I have searched for vintage embroidery hoop and I was really surprised to find something like this because this looks not so normal. Yeah, you know those normal embroidery hoops which are made from this light wood and they look, yeah, like an embroidery hoop looks. It's not nothing special. But this I liked way better, especially because the material is a little darker than we normally know that from normal embroidery hoops. It's made from some kind of a flexible plastic so that it is really easy to bring it around this white thing to hold the fabric later. And it's also, yeah, I would say a little more interesting because of the texture of this fake wood, because it's not wood, it's plastic, yeah, but that makes it also perhaps a little bit more sturdy, I thought. So I was really amazed that I could find that on Amazon. Perhaps you can find it on Amazon where you live as well. So I want to create a background first. For that I use this sign painter stamp set. I guess that you will see, no, I don't guess, I am sure that you will see this stamp set in the future very, very often on my channel. It's just amazing. All of the stamp sets by Stampers Anonymous, and Tim Holtz I'm using today are from the newest release. And the first thing I do here is I cover my background with some pretty cheap gesso. In the first seconds, I thought, what the heck is happening? Perhaps you could see that. It looked a little bit weird when it came out from this bottle, but I guess that was because I had it in my craft room unused for just too long. You can see I could get it like smooth and normal again just by going through it with my paintbrush and then, mixing it a little bit, and then it worked just fine. I have put that on there. Then I have used a spatula and brought that into, yeah, a texture that was more to my liking. And now I want to start with my first experiment. I have never done something like this before. The plan is I want to use the stamps from this stamp set. As you can perhaps see, I have written the word love in the corner there on the top, and then I have placed the other letters just randomly to my stamping block to get approximately the shape of the gesso. And now I use some archival ink vintage photo. And the plan is to stamp into this gesso, which is not completely dry yet, to get a texture and, of course, the stamp impression. And I was also hoping for getting the ink into the gesso. Little prayer. Because I thought if that doesn't work, then what the heck shall I do? But the good thing is the gesso is not dry yet. So if this step fails, you can always take a palette knife or something and take the gesso off, or even if it's completely dry, take a sandpaper and sand the whole surface of the panel off, and then you can get rid of the gesso and start a new try of this technique. But in a second you will see it worked, and it worked nearly exactly like I wanted it. The texture and the impression of the stamps is exactly what I was looking for. And I was so happy. Of course, the stamps are a little bit covered in gesso, yeah, so that is not the problem. You can just clean them off while the gesso is still wet. So don't let that dry. If you want to do something else and don't stamp anymore, then go to your sink and clean your stamps immediately. Otherwise, you would have a really big problem to get the gesso off from the stamps later. But when it's still wet, then it's no problem to clean them. So I have used the same stamps without cleaning them in between to get a second, third, and so on generation of this little arrangement of the stamps. And I think that turned out really, really nice, especially because it is different every single time. Because, of course, you don't have so much ink anymore on the stamps like in the beginning. And the other thing is, while you are doing that, the gesso is drying. And with that, you get a different effect with every single time you stamp. As you can see, the L of love just has fallen off from my block. That is just because it sticked too much to the gesso more than it sticked to the block. Yeah, it's not a problem of the stamp, but it's just because the gesso, when it dries, it gets a little sticky. And that's why it has fallen off. That will happen with other letters in my process in a second as well. But that is good because then your stamp impression also gets a little variation, and you can, of course, you could also change the letters if you want, yeah, and so that it doesn't look always the same. But with the different generations of the stamping, I think it doesn't look the same. Or can you see that it is a repeated stamping? I can't see that, and that is really cool. So then I have taken this stamp. To be honest, I have no idea why. This is from the Deconstructed set, also from the new release by Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz. And I thought this round thing could fit well to the embroidery hoop. These little circles reminded me of some like embroidery yarn in, in a box or so. But then I thought somehow it doesn't fit to the background. It was too busy somehow, and the shape was not the right one. Even if I really like this stamp, I have made other backgrounds with this stamp and I was really satisfied. But for this project, I decided that is not the right background stamp. So I went on with this little guy here from another set, and I thought perhaps it's good to have some more writing, but smaller and in another font. So this is a handwriting, of course, and this gave me the perfect addition to those letters from the other set I have stamped in the beginning. So I went a little crazy with this stamp. I will speed up the video in a second so that you don't have to watch everything in the original speed. But what you can see here is, yeah, nothing else than creating texture with a stamp. You can't really see the original stamp impression anymore, only in those places where we have a lot of ink and the gesso was already relatively dry. But in the other areas, you can see that it lifted up a ton of the gesso, made the most beautiful texture, and it nearly looks like the gesso is peeling off from the background, and I really like that effect. I thought a little bit of color variation could be good, so I have taken my archival ink Ground Espresso and I've stamped again, and you can see more letters are coming off from my block. That's because the gesso is drying, and yeah, it's nearly completely dry. And what you also can see here is that the colors of the archival ink have changed. Can you see this greenish color, which is there where I have stamped with Vintage Photo? That was a little bit crazy because I thought, what the heck is happening? So I had a little like bulb moment because gesso is gesso, and we know that if we use, for example, distress ink or distress oxide ink, that then the color, and I mean in combination with gesso, yeah, then the color of the inks change. And I'm assuming that it's the same with archival ink. I haven't experienced that before because, to be honest, I haven't worked with archival ink for so long. These ink pads I've just bought new because I wanted to try them out, and I haven't done this combination before. So I thought, when that happens, that gesso gets stained by the archival ink, then that must work with crackle paint as well. And that's what you can see me doing here. I have covered the frame of this panel with archival ink, vintage photo, and ground espresso. Just, covered is probably not the right word. I've randomly applied that directly from the ink pad. And then I have put the crackle paint over that, hoping that that gets stained as well, because if I know that right, then crackle paint is gesso based as well, and it should get stained as well. So while we are hoping for this effect and while the crackle paste is drying, we can take a piece of fabric. I have made my life very easy and just cut it in the size of the panel approximately. If you use a crackle paste and perhaps you are a beginner with crackle paste, I can give you a little tip. Just let it air dry instead of using your heat tool, because then the crackles get way better than if you would use the heat tool. So that's why I take this time, this drying time of the crackle paste, and go on with my fabric here. The first thing I've done here is I have taken some water to make the fabric a little wet, to help this oxide spray, which is the color Lost Shadow, move a little better. I have ironed this to make it flat again and have an easier job to later on apply it to the hoop. And I also decided to use the back side of my fabric because that somehow looked more interesting than the front side after applying the oxide spray. So this next set is called Embroidery, and that was the inspiration for this whole project. When I saw this set, I thought, what the heck? So when you see the videos here on my channel, of course, I have already filmed them, so I need time to produce those videos. And when we get the stamps from Tim, of course, that is also a bit before you see them, because we have to make those things and ship them to him. And what I'm trying to say is, my series about my embroidery journal, where I cheated a lot as well, was exactly in the same time when he brought out, or not out, but he showed us this stamp set for the first time. When I saw it, my embroidery journals were laying next to myself, and I was like, what the heck? How could he know that I need exactly those stamps? It's just amazing. It's just amazing. I'm so, so happy about this stamp set. It's just so cute. So, yeah, let's go on with this. I don't believe in coincidences. You know that. So here I am searching for something. I'm searching for some pieces, paper pieces, which I can put additionally to my background, and I am holding them to my display panel to see which colors could match the staining of the crackle paste. On the sides of the panel, the crackle paste got really, really pinkish somehow, and it's a different color than on the front of the panel. That was a little weird. I am assuming that is because my gesso is of course not the same medium like the crackle paste is, so the staining is also different. And with this little pink tag, I think I found a good solution for balancing the colors a little bit. I'm sorry. I also included this little, turquoise-ish piece because I thought that is a nice contrast to the pink. And now I'm gluing everything together, like I want to have this little arrangement here in the middle after I have sanded the edges with a sandpaper a little bit. And perhaps you think, why the heck isn't she gluing this to the fabric? Because when she's stamping now, then in a second this piece will move. You will see in a second why I did it like I did it here. I've pressed really, really hard to my stamping platform to make sure that all of the layers of my little collage here get the stamp impression. You know, it's different levels, and then you have to press a little harder. I mean, it was the first time I did this, but my brain told me press a little harder so that everything gets I mean, all of the layers get this stamp impression. And here you can see the reason why I haven't glued it before stamping, because I wanted to destroy the edges here a little bit to make it look a little more vintage and used. And if I would have done that before the stamping, I think that would have been too high for my stamping platform, because that gives texture, of course. But as you can see, it was really easy to attach this paper collage in the right place. Just take your time, put the glue on, and then, you know, find the right position. I thought the frame of this whole thing is a little bit boring and it looks too new to me. So I have used the Distress Oxide ink pumice stone to ink this edge of this round thing of the fabric. And now I start to paint the flowers. That was, I don't know. I think in the video it looks like, okay, she's painting those flowers. But in my reality, it was such a struggle because I couldn't decide for the colors first. So I wanted to have some of the flowers, that was in my brain. I thought I want to have some of the flowers like, you know, with a yellow center and white petals. So I have chosen fossilized amber and wild honey distress paint, and the white paint is just some normal acrylic paint, relatively cheap, I would say. And then I started painting. Of course, you could also use the picket fence distress paint that is white, but as you can see here, I wanted to have my petals really, really textured. I tried to, make them look like, that they are not flat like the center is and like the paper is, but I wanted to have a little bit of texture, because if you would embroider on an embroidery hoop, that would make texture as well. And I tried to get this here somehow. And that's why I have used the other acrylic paint instead of picket fence. I mean, I even don't have picket fence distress paint, but that wouldn't work so well in this case, because the distress paint is really liquid and it would take a ton of time and, you know, drying time to get a texture like this with the distress paint. Of course, you could mix that perhaps with some gel medium. Then you would have a really easy job, I guess, because then you could create texture really easily, because the gel medium is then, you know, what makes the texture. So the next colors I'm using here are spun sugar for those little tiny flowers there on the top. And for the leaves, I have made a little, variation with bundled sage and forest moss. Why have I chosen those colors? That is easy, because the vintage photo archival ink on my background on the panel has made this greenish color, and I thought that fits really well to this combination with forest moss and bundled sage. And the spun sugar I have chosen because of this pinkish tag, and we have that color in the panel as well on the sides. And the yellow, I think, is something that brings everything together somehow, because the yellow, in my eyes, fits to all of the other colors, and it brings this harmony into this little flower arrangement. First, I thought I want to have the other flowers from the other stamp in another color. And I was struggling for such a long time because I don't know why, but I couldn't imagine how it would look if those colors, those flowers would perhaps be also pink or another color, blue or something like that. I couldn't imagine that. It was really, really hard. So in the end, I ended up with painting them in white as well. The reason was that I thought if I use another color, then it could make this whole thing a little bit too busy. I wanted to have this combination of the fabric, which is in the embroidery hoop, and you would expect embroidery. At the same time, we have the paper there, which is normally not on an embroidery hoop. Also, the stamping, which is normally not on an embroidery hoop, but I wanted to have the attention to the mixture of those materials. And I wanted to have the attention on this mixed media technique I have used here instead of on the colors. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So to make the flowers a little bit more dimensional and to give them a little bit more interest, I've taken some frayed burlap distress paint, mixed that with the yellows I had left over on my mat there. And yeah, I've just applied that really, really randomly and really light, as you can see, so that it doesn't cover the white, but that it just gives some more interest. Next, I have taken a sandpaper to sand the edges of my tray because the crackle paint left some tiny bits and pieces. I didn't like them, so I have just sanded them off. That makes this whole thing also into a real square again. Then I have taken some scorched timber oxide ink to ink the edges and give this whole thing a little frame. And then I found this doily in my stash, and I thought, if we have to cheat, we can do it like, like real cheating. I know that this is not embroidered, but I thought it's a nice addition and it adds to the texture and to the background and to the interest of this thing. So now what you can see here is trying to make an embroidery knot. I guess it has taken me 4 hours in total to learn this. So I decided to leave this in the video instead of showing you the finished embroidered knots, because I wanted to show you that if you want to do something, you can do it. Even if it's just something so simple, it can be a struggle. And the thing is, I think, the most important thing is that you know that you want to have it there and that you don't stop trying it. I have watched, I guess, 2 hours of YouTube videos, and it took me 2 more hours to learn this thing. And then when I turned on the camera, I couldn't remember how it was done. You can't imagine my struggle. But I have it there now, and I'm pretty proud that I could manage that and that I have it there. I think on such a piece, which is made with an embroidery stamp and which has an embroidery hoop, there should be some embroidery somehow. And that's why I made these little knots. And yeah, that adds to the texture, of course. And we have this tiny bit of embroidery there. And the other thing, and that was the main reason for that, is that I can't splatter with acrylic paint to my fabric, because that would look then completely bleeded. And yeah, I think bleeded is not the word. It would bled. I think that is the past of bleed. You know what I mean? The paint would bleed on the fabric. I think that's correct, isn't it? And because of that, I made these little knots to have some interest on the background behind the flowers as well. I have glued everything down with some gel medium. That worked really, really well, especially with the doily. You can apply that with a palette knife, and then you have a really easy job to glue that down. I have put some of the gel medium to the embroidery hoop itself as well, so to the frame, because that is made from plastic. And now here you can see me using some crackle paint again. That is better when you have some kind of a glue underneath, so that the crackle paint can hold on the plastic material of the hoop. I was a little bit afraid that without the gel medium, the crackle paint would fall off later, and that's why I did that. That's also a trick when you have, for example, metal or plastic or other slippery, non-porous surfaces. Then you can add a little bit of some kind of a glue, for example, collage medium or gel medium or whatever you have, which dries transparent and not sticky. And then you can later on, when that is dry, apply the crackle paint, and then it won't fall off in the end after it has crackled. So then I have put some white splatters, and in a second I will put some black splatters to the paper material there as well. I have paid attention again that I don't splatter to the fabric, otherwise, it would bleed and then it would look really, really ugly. But I wanted to have some interest in the background as well with splatters. I mean, a project without splatters made by me, that is not my project, So this set, Floristry, has this "Hello Friend" quote, perfect for this project, because in a second I want to add two friends who are meeting for cheating with embroidery. So I have taken this little lace from my stash and I have added this here to also add to the texture and have more of those textile elements on this project. And these friends, they can go to the center here and they can sit on this little bench of lace. And the "Hello Friend" I have, this little paper with the "Hello Friend" sentiment, I have backed that with some sturdier material. I've just taken some, I guess that was some Ideology packaging or something, sturdy material, to make sure that it is, really stiff, so that I can also back it with some foam tape in a second. That is also, I think, a good trick to get more dimension to such a mixed media piece. I have put some foam tape behind the paper dolls as well. And that has another reason, because, hopefully you can see that in the camera. With the foam tape, the paper dolls and this little quote get a natural shadow from the light that hits the project. Because if I would have glued this thing completely down without the foam tape to the background, the first problem would have been the lace, because that is not the same level like the paper in the background. So the paper dolls would have get wonky. And the other thing is, if I then want a shadow behind the paper dolls and the label, I can't get that so easily with a pen or a crayon or so, because of the different materials in the background. And that's why I like foam tape, because then you get the shadow automatically from the light because of the distance of the paper dolls and the quote to the background. So after the crackle paint on, sorry, it's not paint, crackle paste. Have I said crackle paint before? Oh my goodness, that is a completely different medium. Crackle paste. It's the whole time it's crackle paste. Sorry. After that was dry, I have applied some spun sugar oxide spray and later on some speckled egg oxide spray. And I've also made some shadows on the fabric, because that is possible, sorry, without any problems, with some acrylic paint, black. I have watered that down, and then, you can shade the areas where the crackle paste is. Holy cow, I'm so sorry. But there was still something missing. I thought something is going not wrong, but into not that direction I wanted to have it. It was somehow boring. So I thought I stamp more flowers and paint them as well, but in a totally different style than the other flowers on the embroidery hoop. I was hoping for more depth on this piece, and I also wanted to have the eye to walk around on this piece and discover different styles. The background is, in my eyes, a mixture of modern and vintage. The letters have this modern touch somehow in this case, but the texture is vintage. The flowers on the background on the embroidery hoop are, in my eyes, totally vintage. So I thought, why don't I add some more cleaner flowers in a cleaner style to the this round thing of the hoop. It's the hoop, isn't it? You know what I mean. In this different style. And I also added some lace and some moss, and that made it just perfect for me. And I was so satisfied after I got this idea. I love this piece. I hope you like it as well. And I hope you could get some inspiration from this. If there are any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, and I will give my best, of course, to answer that as soon as possible. And perhaps you want to tell me if you want to try something like this as well. Have a very great and creative day. See you.